Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Blame It on the Stars, where we give you an inside look at what's going on in the universe so you can blame your problems on the stars. It is Jade here.
And it's Kara.
And this week we've got 3 things going on. We're going to be talking all about Uranus entering Gemini, the full moon in Capricorn, as well as Saturn stationing retrograde. But in case you missed it, last week we talked all about Venus entering Gemini and Neptune stationing retrograde. So if you want to know more about that, then definitely check out last week's episode before diving into this one.
And just to give you a heads up, next week we will tell you everything that you need to know about Mercury retrograde in Leo and how that affects you.
And with that being said, let's dive into the episode. So the first thing happening this week is an outer planet shift. We have Uranus entering Gemini. This will happen on July 7th at 3:46 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And per usual, the date and time are from the website astroseek.com. What you need to know. So Uranus is the planet that rules over change, innovation, and the unexpected. And when it moves into the sign of Gemini, which is all about communication, learning, and processing information, as well as sharing information, you can expect the way that you think, speak, or connect to start to change. In society, this is the beginning of a bigger shift in how we interact with technology, the media, and even how we handle our day-to-day conversations. And there might also be some changes regarding education.
How you will feel mentally, you're going to notice that there's a lot of things going on. Your thoughts are moving very quickly. You might feel a little bit more curious or easily distracted or just ready to jump from one idea to another. So with that being said, if you do feel like you are being pulled in many different directions, like there's a lot of new things you want to try or explore, or even like there's just a lot of shifts and changes happening, just be mindful of that and remember that you can use routines and daily habits to counteract or balance some of that energy. And also remember to give yourself space to process everything, and that not everything needs to be rushed. It's okay to go on tangents and really explore all of the new ideas and opportunities that come up for you.
So where this will show up in your life, since this is an outer planet transit, this will have more of a societal impact rather than a personal one. But still in your personal life, this could show up as changes in how you prefer to learn, how you prefer to communicate, or even changes with the platforms that you use to get information or even socialize through social media. You might really feel more called to rethink how you talk to others. And maybe you might find yourself wanting to try out new forms of self-expression, whether that is through the arts or how you present yourself, or in general, you might want to get more involved in local or even online communities.
What will become important to you? A big focus while Uranus is in Gemini is going to be on open-mindedness and adaptability. You might notice that you want to check in with yourself first before seeing what other people are saying about a topic or a situation. You might want to find new ways to connect with others online or in person, or even experiment with how you are presenting your ideas with others, whether you're posting about it on social media or just keeping things to yourself. You also can expect there to be collective shifts because Uranus is an outer planet. So you might notice that there are changes online, in social media, in education, or how we use language overall.
If you're wondering how long this lasts, Uranus was only in Gemini for a short time this year. It will eventually station retrograde and retrograde back into Taurus on November 7th at 9:22 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But next year on April 25th, 2026 at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Uranus will re-enter Gemini and stay there.
And per usual, certain signs will be affected more than others. The signs most affected by Uranus in Gemini are Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces placements. Personal placements only, so Sun, Moon, Rising, Mercury, Venus, and or Mars.
So the next thing happening this week that you're going to want to pay attention to is the full moon in Capricorn, which will happen on July 10th at 4:36 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What you need to know: full moons are for releasing and letting go so that you can bring in a new energy. And in the sign of Capricorn, the full moon will really spotlight your goals, responsibility, and long-term progress. I've probably said this in previous years, but the full moon in Capricorn is always my favorite full moon because of the fact that it helps you see what's working and what's not, especially when it comes to finding a type of work-life balance, since Capricorn tends to be associated with career boundaries and structure, but Cancer is associated with your emotions and your emotional needs. This is a time where you can find a better balance between your outer public work-life world and your inner emotional world.
How you will feel. You're going to feel more focused, reflective, and maybe a little bit more serious. This isn't the most emotional full moon, but it can bring up pressure to perform, prove yourself, or just get things done. Capricorn is a very hardworking sign, and it does focus a lot on long-term goals, as Jade mentioned. So you might feel like there's a lot of pressure or intensity when it comes to achieving your goals, or you might feel like, you just need to get something done and maybe push your well-being aside in order to do that, because this is a full moon and it is a time to release. Something that you might consider setting your intentions on could be letting go of the need to always be productive, always be busy, and give yourself the space you need to rest and relax. You also could notice that you feel like it's time to make a decision that is going to help you move forward. But again, there's some releasing that needs to happen in order for that decision to be made.
So where this will show up in your life? Well, as we previously mentioned, work and personal responsibilities might take more of the center stage, or you could notice themes around your career reputation, leadership, and also all of the expectations you are managing might be coming more to your attention. You might also start to feel very proud of yourself for all of the effort you have been putting in and all of the hard work that you've been doing. But also at the same time, you might still find that you're very well aware of what might still need some fine-tuning.
What will become important to you? As mentioned, you're going to be more focused on your long-term goals, being consistent, and also acknowledging your own hard work and effort. This is a good time to reflect on how far you've come since the beginning of this year or even before that, and also reflect on if your current workload is sustainable or if maybe there's certain aspects that can be released so that you can have more time for yourself.
Certain signs will be affected more than others by this full moon, and those signs will be Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, and Libra, personal placements only, so Sun, Moon, Rising, Mercury, Venus, and or Mars placements. And there are a couple of aspects happening with this full moon that make it just a little bit more interesting. The first is that the sun is sextile Mars and the moon is trine Mars. So there can be a lot of motivation to get things done. You might feel more energized and more driven to take action, especially when it comes to making progress on those long-term goals, and also when it comes to setting some boundaries.
And then we also will have the sun trine the North Node and the moon sextile the North Node. This is really going to help you see the big picture. You might feel guided to take more steps towards your future or something that feels just very important to you and your direction in life. It's okay if it feels like that goal is ultimately farther away, or if it feels like that goal is really ambitious, because Capricorn energy is really focused on very long-term things, and it just might take time before those dreams and goals fully manifest.
And the last thing we will be talking about happening in the astrology is Saturn stationing retrograde in Aries. This happens on July 13th at 12:07 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this could be July 12th if you're in a different time zone. What you need to know: Saturn retrograde is a time to reflect on structure, discipline, and how you're handling more long-term responsibilities. And being that it's in the sign of Aries, the focus will shift towards self-leadership. So this retrograde will allow you a chance to review how you're asserting yourself, how you're taking initiative, and what personal goals you're setting for yourself, and if they are working out for you.
How you will feel. During this time, you're going to feel more aware of things that are blocking your growth or holding you back. Because Saturn's retrograding in Aries, things like self-doubt could be what's holding you back, or even if you've been acting on impulse, or if you've been placing more emphasis on the immediate results instead of long-term progress. This retrograde is a time to really slow down so that you can reassess your goals, what you're doing to work towards them, and then ultimately build a stronger foundation for yourself.
So where this will show up in your life, you might revisit old goals. You might reflect on the way that you lead, especially if you are someone who is in a leadership position. You might also question what type of leader you want to be, and if you even want to continue being a leader. Outside of that, in general, you might also be reflecting on how you take action. If you're someone who takes action quickly or tends to hesitate, you might also notice that people around you might be facing some delays or some lessons when it comes to independence.
What will become important to you? You're going to be more focused on self-discipline and personal responsibility. This is a time to be intentional with the way that you do things, even if that means that you have to go slower than you would like to. It's also a good time to think about your long-term goals and what it is that you're building, especially to just kind of check in with yourself to see if your goals are really aligned with your values.
If you're wondering how long this lasts, the Saturn retrograde will last until November 27th at 10:51 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Saturn does, in the middle of the retrograde, move into Pisces. This happens on September 1st at 4:06 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then once it is direct, Saturn will re-enter Aries on February 13th, 2026 at 7:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Saturn will stay in Aries after that.
The signs that are most affected by Saturn retrograde in Aries are Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn. And then once Saturn re-enters into Pisces, the signs that are most affected will be Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, and Sagittarius. Personal placements only for all of those signs, meaning Sun, Moon, Rising, Mercury, Venus, and or Mars placements.
And that is it for this week's episode. Just a reminder, next week we'll be talking all about Mercury retrograde in Leo. So if you want to know more about that, then make sure wherever you're listening to the podcast, you're subscribed with the notifications turned on so you don't miss when we post next week. But until then, that is all for now, and we'll see you all next Monday.